She was my high school English teacher. Now she's suing me for harassment, after I refused to stay silent. The words sat between us like a shattered glass on the table, sharp, painful, and impossible to ignore. Outside the window, rain trailed down in lazy streaks against the glass, blurring the glow of streetlights and the outlines of hurried pedestrians. Inside the little Thai restaurant, the air was warm with the scent of lemongrass, chili, and garlic. But I barely tasted anything. Melanie stared at me. Her hands had stopped moving halfway through lifting her fork. Her pad thai sat untouched. Her lips parted slightly but no words came out, not yet. I waited. "Are you serious?" she finally whispered. Her voice broke off, and she shook her head slowly like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. I nodded. "I'm serious." There was a long pause, punctuated only by the clinking of silverware from a nearby table and the low hum of soft music playing overhead. Melanie leaned back in her chair, arms crossed loosely across her chest. She looked more confused than angry. "How old were you?" 17, I said. "Senior year." "And she was 32, I said. "Maybe 33. I never knew for sure." Melanie exhaled hard and rubbed her temples. "Jesus, Fred." I waited again. I didn't want to rush her. I didn't even know how to talk about this. Until 2 months ago I hadn't talked about it with anyone. Not my parents, not my therapist, no one. "She wasn't just your teacher," Melanie said finally, voice tighter now. "She was your English teacher. That one you always said made you love books." "Yeah," I said. "That one." Melanie went quiet again. I took a sip of water I didn't want. My mouth felt like it had been packed with cotton. "You said she's suing you?" she asked, carefully now. "For what?" "Defamation," I said, "and harassment, emotional distress, some nonsense about trying to damage her career." Melanie blinked. "But you haven't even gone public." "I met with a lawyer about it," I said, "just to explore options, maybe go forward with a civil suit." The lawyer sent an official inquiry to her college for past misconduct claims. That's when she got wind of it. And now she's trying to scare me into silence. Melanie shook her head again. "Holy hell. I didn't even think I'd do anything with it," I said, voice quieter now. "But after all these years I can't keep pretending it didn't happen." She was quiet. I looked away, back out the window where the rain kept falling, turning the city into a watercolor painting. "I always told myself it was a relationship," I said. "I thought I was mature. I thought she loved me. Hell, I loved her. I thought I was the one in control." Melanie looked at me then. Her expression had softened, though her eyes were still wide with shock. "But you were a kid," she said. "A teenager. She was an adult in a position of power." I nodded. The shame bubbled in my throat like bile. "I know," I said. "It took me years to admit that." "What happened?" she asked. "I mean, how did it start?" I stared at the table for a moment, remembering the smell of chalk and dry books, the sound of her heels in the hallway, the way she said my name like it was a secret. "She started praising my writing," I said I had real talent. Then she offered to help me apply for scholarships, stayed after class to review essays. Then one day, she asked if I wanted to ride with her to a poetry reading downtown. Melanie raised her eyebrows. I said yes, I added. "Of course I did. I thought she believed in me." I didn't go into detail about the weeks that followed, the late-night texts, the kiss in her car, the first time I spent the night at her place under the pretense of a study session. I didn't say how confused I'd felt, or how excited, or how terrified, or how she'd told me I was mature for my age, that I was special. Instead, I said, she made me feel like the center of the universe. And then one day, right before graduation, she told me to forget everything. Said I misunderstood, that it was a mistake, that no one would ever believe me. Melanie's mouth pressed into a thin line. "That's abuse, Fred. I know that now," I said. "But it's like, even saying it out loud feels wrong, like I'm betraying someone, or making it up." "She groomed you?" I looked at her. She was leaning forward now, her hand over mine on the table. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're not wrong. And you don't deserve to carry this alone." My throat tightened. I looked down, blinking fast. For a second I wanted to crawl out of my skin and disappear. "She's a professor now," I said. "Wrote a book on ethics in literature. Gave a TED Talk about empowering youth. She's famous in a small, academic way." Melanie's eyes narrowed. "And she's terrified you'll expose her." "I think so." She leaned back again, thoughtful. "So what now?" "I don't know," I said. The lawyer said it's an uphill battle. It happened years ago. The statute of limitations for criminal charges is long past. But civil court's still an option. She nodded slowly. Then I think you should do it. I looked up surprised. You do? Fred, she took advantage of you. You're a therapist now. You know what this is. If you don't speak up, how many more kids does she hurt? Or silence? I swallowed hard. It's going to get ugly, I said. And I'm scared. She reached out, lacing her fingers with mine. Her hand was warm, steady. I'll be here, she said. The whole way. The rain tapped harder against the glass. The server came by and refilled our water, and we both pretended not to notice how red my eyes had gone. I squeezed her hand once and nodded. Maybe it was finally time to stop being silent. 2006, senior year. The halls of Madison High smelled like dry erase markers, cafeteria grease, and teenage sweat. Lockers slammed. Someone yelled down the hallway. Sneakers squeaked against linoleum. It was chaos. The kind of chaos that made adults nostalgic and students numb. But for me, there was always one place that felt different. Room 214, English literature. A quiet island in the storm. Miss Andrews stood at the front of the class, tall and poised, with waves of auburn hair that never seemed out of place. She wore bold lipstick and fitted blazers, always in deep colors, navy, burgundy, forest green. She was 32, but she might as well have been from another universe. Confident, sharp, magnetic. The boys all had crushes on her, the girls admired her, the teachers respected her, and me, I idolized her. Frederick, she said one day, holding up my essay between two manicured fingers. This is brilliant. I was 16 then, maybe barely 17, lanky and awkward with a mess of brown curls and too many books in my backpack. I blinked, sure I'd misheard. She smiled, warm and direct. Your analysis of the bell jar, the way you connected Sylvia Plath's voice to modern mental health struggles, that's not something I see from most adults, let alone a high school senior. I felt heat rush to my face. Thank you, I mumbled, not knowing what else to say. She leaned a little closer. Have you ever thought about writing professionally? That was the first moment, the first spark. From there, it was a slow burn. It started with compliments, encouragement. She circled notes in the margins of my papers that went beyond grammar or structure. She wrote things like, "You have a writer's soul. This sentence broke my heart, in the best way. Keep this, it's gold." I started staying after class to ask about scholarships. She offered to help me put together applications for creative writing programs. Then it became more. One afternoon, as the other students filed out, she paused beside my desk and said, "You remind me of someone I used to know, an old friend. He was a poet, brilliant, sensitive." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and nodded, drunk on the attention. "Don't let this place dull you," she added. "You're brighter than they know." The boundary between teacher and student began to blur, not all at once, but like sand slipping beneath your feet. First came the personal conversations. She asked if things were okay at home. I told her about my dad being gone a lot for work, my mom stressed out and tired. She listened, really listened. It felt like no one else did. Then came the texts. It was a Friday night, late. I was sitting in my bedroom flipping through a worn copy of Catcher in the Rye when my phone buzzed. "Miss Andrews, did you ever read that Pablo Neruda poem I mentioned? The one about silence?" I stared at it for a full minute. My teacher was texting me. "At night?" I typed back with shaky fingers. "Me, not yet. I'll look it up now. Miss Andrews, let me know what you think. It always reminds me of you. Quiet but intense." My heart thudded so loudly I was sure my mom could hear it from the hallway. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up reading Neruda, then reading the message again. And again. Soon we were texting almost daily. Always about books at first, then about school gossip, then about life. She told me she sometimes felt lonely. I told her I did too. She said most people didn't understand her. I told her I felt the same way. It felt like a secret world, just the two of us. I remember the first time she touched me outside of class. It was in the hallway, quick, innocent, probably meaningless to anyone else. She placed her hand on my arm, smiled and said, "You're different from the other boys." I floated through the rest of the day like I had helium in my chest. She asked if I could help her carry some books to her car. It was after hours. The halls were empty, the parking lot already starting to darken under the early December sky. We walked side by side to her silver Subaru. "I think you're extraordinary," she said, unlocking the back door. And I don't just mean as a student. I looked at her, unsure. She smiled, a little sad. Sometimes I feel like you see me more clearly than anyone else. Then she brushed a lock of hair from my forehead. Just once. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I sat in my room, rereading her texts with a pounding heart. My hand shook. It felt like falling in love. Real love. Movie love. I didn't know, couldn't know, that it was something else entirely. Looking back, I can still remember the smell of her classroom. Dry paper, perfume, old books. I can still see the portraits on the walls. Shakespeare, Virginia Woolf, Toni Morrison. I used to stare at their eyes during class, wondering what they'd think of me if they knew. She told me I was special. She told me I was mature for my age. She told me we had a connection, something deeper, and I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. Back in the present, sitting across from Melanie in that small Thai restaurant, I had called it what it really was. Not a relationship, not love, manipulation, grooming, abuse. But in 2006, all I wanted was to matter to someone, to feel seen. And Andrea Andrews knew exactly how to make that happen, and how to twist it into something else entirely. Gold-lettered spines and framed headlines from past legal victories. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I was back in her classroom, small, uncertain, out of place. I need you to understand something, Fred, said Julia Monroe, my attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s. We are not filing a criminal complaint. The statute of limitations for that expired years ago. I nodded, though my stomach clenched at her words. I'd known this already, but hearing it out loud still stung. This will be a civil case, she continued. Emotional distress, abuse of power, violation of duty of care. We're aiming to hold her accountable, publicly. I glanced at the document on her desk. My name at the top, hers at the bottom, Andrea Andrews. I swallowed. It's going to get messy, isn't it? Julia didn't flinch. It already is. The day we filed, nothing dramatic happened. No knock on the door, no flashing lights. Just a notification in her inbox and a brief press release Julia's office distributed to local news outlets. But within 48 hours, the internet caught wind of it. The headline made it to Reddit first. Man sues former teacher for grooming. 17 years later, then the tabloids ran with it. TED Talk professor accused of predatory relationship with former student. And then came the comments. This is why men shouldn't wait 17 years to speak up. He probably just wants money. Pathetic. Not all teacher-student relationships are abuse. Some of us married our teachers and are happy. But he was 17. That's legal in some states. I stopped reading after an hour, then started again at 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. At home, Melanie tried to be strong for both of us. She brought me tea I didn't drink, reminded me to eat, insisted I shut my laptop at night. But she couldn't stop the spiral in my head, the sharp drop from certainty to shame. I keep seeing her face, I told her one night, sitting on the edge of our bed, smiling, telling me I was special, and now people are acting like I'm trying to destroy her life. Melanie knelt in front of me, holding my hands. She already destroyed yours, Fred. She just did it quietly. Over years. I started Googling her name again, like I used to back in college. Only this time, I wasn't a lovesick teenager trying to see if she had a blog or a Goodreads account. Andrea Andrews, now Dr. Andrews, was a tenured professor at one of the top liberal arts colleges in the Northeast. She taught modern feminist literature and ethics in education. She'd written 3 books. The Myth of the Perfect Teacher was a bestseller. Her TED Talk, What Our Students Teach Us, had over 3.2 million views. I watched part of it, just the opening. She stood on stage in a cream blazer, smiling confidently. When I was younger, I thought teaching was about control. Now I know it's about connection. I closed the laptop. I wanted to throw it across the room. Back at Julia's office, the mood had shifted. More tension, more scrutiny. She hired representation, Julia said, scanning an email. A big firm. They're going to try and bury us in legal delays? She still hasn't said anything publicly, I said. Is that good? She's playing it smart. Silence paints her as dignified. If we speak, we look emotional. If she stays quiet, she looks composed. It made me want to scream. She's always been composed, I muttered. She knew exactly how to make everyone believe she was the adult in the room. She still does. Julia nodded. And now you're forcing her to drop the mask. That scares her more than anything. At night, I'd lie awake beside Melanie, staring at the ceiling. Sometimes she'd hold my hand until I fell asleep. Other times I'd wait until she was breathing softly and go back to my laptop. I'd scroll through old yearbook photos, news articles, screenshots of comments. Every picture of Andrea smiling at a podium or quoted in an op-ed triggered something deep in my chest. Anger, confusion, guilt. But beneath all that, clarity. For years I had let the silence shape my memory. I called it complicated. I called it romantic. I thought I was protecting her, and maybe in some twisted way myself. But now, for the first time, the silence wasn't mine to carry. It took her less than a week to respond. Andrea filed a countersuit. The headline read like a slap in the face: "Respected professor files harassment claim against former student after defamation suit." The document landed in Julia's inbox on a rainy Tuesday morning. I was still half asleep, sipping lukewarm coffee in the kitchen when she called. "She's accusing you of obsessive behavior," Julia said flatly. "Claims you've been stalking her online, emailing her colleagues, trying to ruin her professional standing." I choked on the coffee. "What? I've done none of that." "She included screenshots," she continued. "Tweets, Reddit threads, mentions in forums. She's framing it like you've weaponized the internet against her." "But I didn't post anything," Julia sighed. "It doesn't matter. The internet is public. She's going to argue you incited a campaign of harassment." By the end of the week, the narrative had shifted. Suddenly, she wasn't the former teacher under scrutiny. She was a victim. An accomplished woman being persecuted by a bitter man from her past. BuzzFeed ran a piece titled, "The Cost of Speaking Out: What Happens When Female Educators Are Targeted by Online Mobs." Andrea didn't give a direct interview. She didn't have to. Former students came forward in droves. "Dr. Andrews changed my life. She taught me how to use my voice. She's a feminist role model. This attack is disgusting. We stand with Andrea." Someone even made a TikTok montage of her TED Talk clip set to Florence plus the Machine. It went viral. The threat started slowly. "Leave her alone. She made something of herself. What did you ever do?" Then they got darker. "Hope your license gets pulled, predator. Kill yourself, creep. She should have left you in high school." One morning I opened Reddit and saw a post titled, "Why is no one talking about Fred Miller's sketchy therapy practice?" They'd found my Psychology Today profile, my Yelp reviews. Someone even called my clinic pretending to be a client just to confirm I worked there. That afternoon, a real client canceled. "I'm just not comfortable," she said in a voicemail. Given the situation, she didn't even say my name. On Thursday night, I exploded. "I should have never said anything," I snapped, slamming a cabinet door shut in the kitchen. "She wins either way, doesn't she? She's the hero, I'm the villain. End of story." Melanie stood by the counter, arms crossed, watching me come undone. "That's not true." "Yes, it is. Look around, Mel. She's on TED Talk compilations while I'm getting death threats from teenagers in anime profile pictures." She flinched at my tone. I regretted it immediately. But I couldn't stop. She was my teacher, my abuser, and now I'm the one people are warning their daughters about? How the hell does that make sense? Melanie walked over and put a hand on my arm. "It makes sense because that's how power works. She has it, you don't, not yet." I sat down hard on a kitchen stool, head in my hands. "I don't know if I can do this." "You have to do this." I looked up at her. "Why? So I can keep reliving it every day? So people can dissect my teenage trauma like it's a Twitter poll?" "Because if you don't," she said, voice steady, "she gets to keep doing this. To others. Maybe not the same way. But the silence protects her. Always has." Later that night, I sat on the edge of our bed, scrolling through the comments on her YouTube videos. People were calling her a national treasure, a voice of reason, a pillar of modern education. It was like watching someone rewrite history in real time. In some corner of my brain, the old narrative stirred. Maybe she really did love me. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should just disappear. But then I remembered the first time she kissed me. In her car. In the empty school parking lot. I was 17. I was scared. I thought I was chosen. Just between us, no one would understand. Back then I believed her. But now I understood that silence wasn't love, it was control. And I wasn't a boy anymore. "You'll ruin everything, Fred. Don't say a word." Her voice still echoed in my head years later, low, urgent, and laced with that gentle authority only teachers seem to master. She leaned in close, her fingers gripping my wrist too tight for comfort. "This is special. It's ours. But if you tell anyone..." She never had to finish the sentence. I knew what she meant. I'd lose her. I'd lose everything. The school psychologist's office was tucked in a forgotten wing of the building, where the lights flickered and the walls smelled like dust and old chalk. His name was Mr. Halverson, a tired man with a tie that never sat quite right, and a desk cluttered with stress balls and expired candy. I remember sitting across from him, knees bouncing, my palms slick with sweat. I think something inappropriate is happening with a teacher. He didn't even look up, just scribbled something in a notebook and muttered, "Are you failing a class?" "No, it's not about grades." He looked up, frowning slightly. "What kind of inappropriate?" I hesitated. My mouth was dry. "She texts me, late at night, sometimes, about things that aren't school." A pause. He leaned back in his chair. "Teenagers get confused, Fred. Teachers try to relate. You're probably misreading things." She kissed me. Silence. He blinked, then smiled. A thin, uncomfortable smile. "Okay. Well, let's not make accusations we can't take back, all right? Are you under stress at home?" That was it. I nodded, got up and left, and never went back. In the present, I stood in our bathroom gripping the edges of the sink, staring into the mirror. My reflection looked unfamiliar. Bloodshot eyes, jaw clenched, something brittle behind the tiredness. I splashed cold water on my face, but it didn't help. I could still hear her voice, could still feel the weight of that shame. For so long I'd called it a secret, then a mistake, then a memory. But it wasn't any of those things. It was abuse. That afternoon I got an email, subject, from Rebecca T. to fredmillerpsych@gmail.com. "Hi, I saw the article about you and Dr. Andrews. I don't know if this means anything, but I had her too. I know what it feels like. I'm not ready to talk publicly. But you're not the only one. I read it 3 times before I breathed. Rebecca. She must have been a couple of years below me. I didn't remember her face clearly, but the name sparked something. A shy girl who used to sit in the front row, always raising her hand, always turning her work in early." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Rebecca, thank you for reaching out. It means more than I can say. I understand you're not ready. I truly do. But if you're willing to talk, even just privately, I think it could help us both. Fred." I hit send and stared at the screen. Melanie walked in a few minutes later, holding 2 mugs of tea. She paused when she saw my expression. "Something happen?" I handed her the laptop. She read the email silently, then looked up. "She's not the only one." I nodded. "She's scared. Of course she is." Melanie sat beside me on the couch. "But she wrote to you anyway. That takes guts. Do you think she'd testify?" "I think," she said carefully, "you give her time. Let her decide. Just knowing someone else went through it, that already changes everything." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while the rain tapped against the windows. It had taken me 17 years to call it what it was. 17 years to stop pretending I'd been in control. Now finally the silence was breaking. And I wasn't alone anymore. The courtroom smelled like old wood and nerves. Everything was polished, the benches, the railing, the judge's desk, but nothing about it felt clean. Cameras flashed the moment I stepped in. I kept my eyes forward, trying not to see the faces in the gallery. I focused on one thing, the truth. My truth. Melanie squeezed my hand as I passed our bench. Hers was ice cold. Mine wasn't any better. I took the witness stand. "Mr. Camden," the judge said, "you may begin." My voice came out rough at first. "My name is Frederick Camden. I'm here today to tell you what happened to me when I was 17. I looked at the jury. Most of them held still, tense. My teacher, Andrea Andrews, groomed and manipulated me. She made me believe we had a special bond. She blurred the lines between teacher and student, adult and child. I didn't know it was wrong because she made me feel seen, but it was wrong. Andrea sat across from me, her face unreadable. Calm, not a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She told me not to tell anyone, said I'd ruin her life, that no one would believe me. She made me feel complicit in something I didn't understand. I paused. And for years I thought it was my fault, but it wasn't. I could feel a tremble in my hands. I clasped them in my lap. She was the adult, I was a kid. And now I'm here finally saying it out loud because silence has only protected her. I stepped down, every muscle in my legs stiff from holding back emotion. Then Andrea rose. She walked to the stand like she was heading to a podium at a faculty meeting. Confident, rehearsed, perfectly measured. "Thank you, Your Honor," she began, her voice gentle, composed. "I wish none of this had to happen." She folded her hands delicately. "Frederick was always a passionate student. sensitive, introspective, sometimes troubled. I tried to help him, but he became attached. When he reached out to me again, years later, I ignored his messages. I was afraid of his obsession. I never crossed a line. I wanted to shout, but I knew better. She kept her tone soft, like she was speaking to children. Now he's weaponizing a teenage crush into a public smear campaign. It breaks my heart. She was good. She knew how to control a room, the same way she used to control me. For a few minutes I saw the doubt creep in on the jurors' faces. I felt the shift. And then it happened. A voice came from the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Heads turned. A woman stepped forward, small, pale, visibly nervous. It was Rebecca. My heart stopped. The judge leaned forward. "Miss? My name is Rebecca Lyon. I was also a student of Ms. Andrews. I have something to say." My attorney rose, whispering something to the judge. A short conference followed. Then, the judge nodded. "You may proceed." Briefly, Rebecca stepped into the witness box like it might collapse beneath her. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "I was 17 when Miss Andrews started texting me late at night. At first it was about school, writing, then it got strange. She complimented how I dressed, told me I had an old soul, invited me to her house to talk about my future. She made me feel chosen, until I realized she was doing things no teacher should." A murmur spread through the room. I never said anything. I was scared. I thought no one would believe me. But when I saw Fred's story, I knew I wasn't alone. I looked over at Andrea. For the first time her mask cracked. Just a flicker, a twitch in her jaw. Rebecca stepped down, visibly shaking, and sat in the gallery. I caught her eye and we exchanged a brief broken smile. Then my attorney stood and presented the last piece. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit digital evidence. Screenshots recovered from Mr. Camden's phone backups. These are original files, time-stamped and verified." The screen behind the stand lit up with messages. "You make me feel alive again. But no one would understand. Don't say anything, Fred. You'll ruin everything. If they find out, I'll lose my job, and you'll regret it." Each line hit like a hammer. Some people in the courtroom gasped, others simply stared. The judge sat back. "We'll take a brief recess." In the waiting room, I sat down heavily on the bench. My hands were shaking now. Melanie sat beside me, holding my hand in both of hers, trying to warm it up. She looked at me, eyes brimming. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you." "I don't care about winning," I said. "I just wanted someone to hear me." She nodded. They did. When we returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere was dense. No more whispers, no more shifting in seats, just silence. The judge cleared his throat. After reviewing the testimonies and submitted evidence, including the newly admitted witness statement, this court finds insufficient grounds for Miss Andrews's claim of harassment and defamation. The countersuit is hereby dismissed. A moment of stillness, then a rush of breath from behind me. Melanie. Andrea didn't look back as she stood and left the courtroom, but I watched her. The confident stride was gone. The air of control had cracked. I wasn't triumphant. I didn't want to scream or celebrate. I just felt light, like the weight of 20 years had finally been lifted off my chest. Outside, the air was sharp and clear. Reporters waited, but I didn't stop for them. I turned to Melanie and whispered, "It's over." She smiled. "No, it's just beginning. Some victories don't feel like fireworks. They feel like quiet." The trial was over. The judge had ruled in my favor. For the first time, the word victim didn't make me flinch, because it came with something I hadn't expected: belief. Recognition. Andrea didn't appeal. She disappeared. The college where she once lectured issued a short, sterile press release. Something about ethical violations and disciplinary measures. Word got out fast. Publishers dropped her. Interviews vanished. Her carefully curated image, the brilliant author, the inspiring professor, crumbled like dust. But I didn't track the headlines. I didn't refresh the news or look at her name on social media. I didn't care. It wasn't about her anymore. After the ruling, Melanie and I went home and slept for 12 hours straight. No tears, no celebrations, just rest. I hadn't realized how tired my bones were in the weeks that followed. I opened my new practice. It was small, tucked into the second floor of a brick building on Hawthorne Street. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Soft lighting, bookshelves lined with memoirs and psychology texts, a couch that didn't squeak when you sat on it. I put a plant in the window, bought a kettle, and kept a tray of teas near the door. Most of my clients are adults who've carried something heavy for too long, childhood wounds, stories they were told to forget. Some walk in with shame etched deep in their posture, others with anger. But all of them want the same thing I once did, to be heard without being doubted. And I can offer that now, not perfectly, but truthfully. One afternoon between sessions, I opened a letter that had been forwarded to my office. It was handwritten, loopy cursive, faint blue ink. Dear Fred, I don't know you, but I read about your case in a forum I follow. I've never told anyone what happened to me in high school, not my partner, not my therapist. But after I read your story, I sat down and wrote it all out for the first time. I just wanted to say, thank you. You helped me remember that it wasn't my fault. I read it twice, then 3 times. My throat tightened. It didn't bring pride. It brought quiet, the kind that settles deep in your chest and stays there. Peace, not vindication. Later that week, Melanie and I went to the park. It was one of those early spring days when everything still smells like rain, trees starting to bloom, children zipping past on bikes, shouting and laughing. Someone played music softly from a portable speaker near a bench. We walked without talking much, just holding hands. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Feels different now, I nodded. Yeah, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too, I said, surprised I meant it. We sat under a tree near the pond. Ducks drifted across the surface, lazy and content. I watched the sunlight dance across the water. No panic in my chest. No flashbacks, just stillness. I used to think healing would feel like fire, like some triumphant blaze burning everything down. But it's more like this. Gentle, slow, a soft place to land after a long fall. I keep thinking about that letter, I said. Melanie smiled. You've started something. You might not know how far it reaches, but it matters. I looked around. Kids, dogs, laughter in the distance. Life was happening, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I used to think I was broken, I whispered. Now I know I was just hurt. Melanie squeezed my hand. And healing. I watched a boy help his younger sister climb onto her bike. She wobbled, then pedaled off, squealing with delight. Yeah, I said. Healing,